Okay, welcome to Build to Win Series 2. So, can't believe we're already here for the start of 2026. Well, it's not the start anymore, we're already in May. Big changes have already swept through the construction industry. So, what is Build to Win? The series focuses on how the NCC and Australian standards applied across real projects across design, system selection, installation, and inspection, which is perfectly poised for tonight's podcast guest for Series 2 kickoff. We aim to help shape a new mindset in the construction industry where collaboration across all sectors becomes a part of the norm once again, giving every party the best chance for a quality and compliant outcome. So this series 2 is about shorter, sharper sessions. And in the last session, we'll have a dedicated Q&A. So Craig from our team will pop some information about how you can sign up to that. So an hour long, really short session at the end. We're not going to have long drawn out sessions. They're only an hour power to an hour and a half. But majority of the sessions will be an hour with a short, sharp Q&A. But what we're going to do is some feedback from Series 1 is people wanted a dedicated Q&A session. So we're going to have that at the end of the session. Now, what that schedule looks like, if you can see it up on your screen there. We've got the podcast guest tonight, which is David Previte from Waterproofing Integrity. So I'll be introducing him in a sec. Then you can see right down all Tuesdays for Series 2. I was also showing some feedback that we would like the series not to clash with the state of origin, which is on Wednesday nights. So we accommodate all people and parties for the series of training. And you'll see right down the end on July 14 is our final Q&A, where we're going to wrap up the whole series. We're going to be requesting for those people who sign up to that additional session that you put your questions in advance, because not everyone likes to ask a question live online. So we're bringing out a different format where you put them in advance, and David will likely join. We're going to have Brendan Burner join, the other key presenters as well. We'll address your questions in depth. We can't put this series together without these great sponsors. So Monsoon Australia, Dinstar Structural Walling, Ross Taylor and Associates. So Ross was the first podcast guest for Series 1. Extec Gen Materials Testing Services, Water Stop Shop, Burn Technical Services, Demtech, Jasani Australia, Sealcomb Filler Gauge, the Construction Advisor, Penetron Australia. There's a bit of news happening around Penetron, so we'll see what that's going to look like before the end of this series. Project Group, Dry Space Solutions, Aquin, RLA Polymers, of course, Waterproofing Integrity, and Kingspan. So massive crack at it this year from our team. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you all David Previte from Waterproofing Integrity. David, how are you, mate?
Very good, mate. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the chat and then running through this presentation with you.
Awesome, mate. It's great to have you on. I know we do a fair bit together, but not many people would have the opportunity to get to know you outside of what you do, which is work like a madman, and got one of the fastest growing companies in Australia around what you specifically do. So, mate, looking forward to get into it. Obviously, we've got this podcast session here, and then we'll get into a dedicated webinar on inspection and testing. So we'll crack straight into it, mate. So for those who don't know, David, how did you first enter into the building and waterproofing industry?
Well, specifically waterproofing, I'd imagine probably like a lot of people that's in this space now, and that's completely by accident.
Yeah.
When I was not too long out of high school, I'd gone into uni studying engineering and then combination of construction management. Needed to support myself, so took on a part-time job or a couple of part-time jobs, but one of the very earliest ones was getting into waterproofing, bit of installation, but then also had an aptitude for costing and planning and that sort of thing. So I had a hand in all of those things while I was still up in North Queensland, actually. So after doing that for sort of more than a few years,
Yeah.
circumstances had it that it was time for me to move down to Sydney for some bigger opportunities, and then I leveraged that into a bigger space here and kept it going.
Awesome. And say you sort of fell into waterproofing. I think most tradies fall into the trade. Okay. We did a training session yesterday, yeah, with a large company in Victoria. And it sort of come up and said, oh, no one's at school going, I want to be a waterproofer. Well, very few people would. So how did you get into it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think you're completely right. Like no one does. Like I don't think anyone in high school really knows what they're going to do, want to do with their lives. And trying to plan that is quite difficult. I think a good milestone is or waypoint is that your career profession should help you live the life that you want to live, right? And while waterproofing isn't probably one of the well-known trades,
Yeah,
um, being a niche space, it does, have its advantages in that you're not, competing against 10,000 other electricians and so on. So
yeah,
I think that's the way if I got into it by accident, I stayed in it because growing my skill in a relatively more niche trade gave me more leverage to do more things, earn more money, work on more interesting projects, grow my skill set in this space and so on.
So you got into waterproofing, and then now you've got one of the fastest growing companies in Australia, waterproofing integrity. What is your vision for waterproofing integrity? And did you always aspire to have one of the biggest companies in Australia? And I'd love to hear some of the challenges that you face around scaling a business so quick. That does really high risk critical work.
Yeah, it's I'll answer your last question first is did I always aspire to this? The answer is definitely not. I think my wife would even quote me to say that I said more than a few times is who would ever be silly enough to want to own a business. I'm very happy to just work for someone and let them take all of the risk and so on.
Yeah,
But after a certain point of growing my skill set, I found the thing that I really liked to do was develop a skill and apply it and repeat, right? And so when I did that during, the contractor phase of waterproofing, which
yeah,
I contributed to the business that I was a part of the time a lot. And then when this came up, it was just sort of a logical next step. It wasn't a case of, oh, I always wanted to be a business owner. It was just I want to do more with these skills that I'm learning, and I think this is a way to apply it. And so that was the instigating part. And then the next part was once I started, having some people join the team, and they were great people, and I felt a sense of responsibility towards them that once you start growing and seeing the opportunities that it can create for people, going from, not knowing too much and having a low earning potential, and then we grow together and the things that it creates for them and myself at the same time. I think that's the thing I'm most attractive to and continues to drive me further towards what we have planned in the future is the opportunity that comes with growth from solving people's problems.
yeah. And so, few states in Australia now, you've got a pretty decent sized workforce. In how long have you been going now with waterproofing integrity?
Oh, I think we're just coming up to our seventh birthday, unless my maths is failing me. So we started in 2019,
Yeah.
middle of the year on the financial year. And we're about a month away from July now, so not too far off 7 years.
It's a big ask because a lot of companies don't see 7 years, let alone scale.
Mm.
Um, so let's talk about the scaling aspect and how do we deal with consistent measurable outcomes when we scale quick, particularly around such, high risk important work.
Yeah. I think I've answered this question in a lot of different ways over time, and I think I could still answer it in a lot of different ways. But the one that I'm most attracted to right now is sort of three things. First of
Yep.
all, this is the most obvious one. You need to know your skill or your trade, right? You need to be able to deliver the service. If it's installing waterproofing, then you need to be a good waterproofing installer. Pretty obvious, right? The next one is sort of a lot more relevant to scaling, and those two things are, and I picked this up recently from someone I respect a lot, is you need to know your numbers and you need to know your people. And if you understand those two things inside and out, you'll understand exactly where you are and exactly what your next step should be in order to grow your opportunities. Hopefully that wasn't too enigmatic.
No, but you're always a man with words, mate, many words. Um, so in the same time frame, you've gone from, let's just say a punter on the tools, then you've grown waterproofing integrity, and you've also become the president of the Australian Institute of Waterproofing and had two kids with another one on the way. So, first question is, I suppose, what is your vision for the AIW? Um, and, how do you juggle it all?
Oh, how do you juggle it all? I'll start with the AIW vision because that's an easier one to answer, I think. I wanted to take the AIW back to basics a little bit, right? What does any industry body or association do? What's the purpose of it? It's funded by its members. It's by members for members. So of course the whole idea is to actually come together
Yeah.
through combination of financial resources that are paid through the membership fees and the time through the people that volunteer to it. And we need to put all of that together and we need to create something of value, right? So we looked at it and said, okay, well, then what is of value? First of all, to our members, that's our primary mandate for obvious reasons. Second all is to the industry, right? Because there's a very healthy mindset around if you make the industry better, then that's better for everyone in it, including our members, right? So we try to do both of those things at the same time. And we said, well, let's rather than sitting and brainstorming and coming up with all these grand ambitions that will never come to light, let's start off with small, achievable wins
Yeah.
that we can do and be happy with. We can feel like we achieved something. Our members can feel like there's some value being given there. And then it can just grow from there in a positive compounding way. And that's sort of been our goal over the past few years. And I think we've done that quite successfully between the events that we do, the online stuff, webinars and whatnot. We had one very recently, which you'd kindly organized and others contributed towards. The advocacy sort of stuff that we're trying to do, whether that's responding to government petitions about trade licensing or certain other things that are going on. We just want to be active and be active in a way that's not fluffy and silly, but a way that actually gives value back to the members. And sometimes that's a little bit of a guessing game, but we do our best and we're open to feedback. Um,
So, while I've got you on that topic of trade, national trade licensing or trade registration and licensing, that's a goal of mine to help bring in a new model around Australia that gets everyone on a similar page and measures everyone's skills. What are your thoughts about a national trade licensing model and how might it impact building quality and accountability?
mm. I think it won't solve it by itself, but it's a great step forward.
Yeah.
In New South Wales, we've had trade licensing for a while, and there's still a little bit of workarounds where the person with the license maybe isn't the one on site and whatnot. But it is a really good step in the right direction, and maybe with a few tweaks, closing up those loopholes, make it really good. And that's why one of the uh, papers that we wrote up as the AIW recently was the response to the ACT government, who is considering bringing this in. And we gave them that sort of feedback and said, yes, we are supportive of it. We do think that this is a skilled trade. I know I'm preaching to the converted attending here, but we really think things can go badly wrong, and they have gone badly wrong in the past. And asset owners, apartment owners have worn the cost of that. So if trade licensing can increase the bar of who's allowed to do this work and get better outcomes, then we're all for it. And to be honest, putting my RW president's hat on, we don't want our members, who we think are very skilled and capable people, we don't want them competing against people that financially competing against people that just bought a roller and a drum of membrane yesterday, and now they're turning up to a site and they're calling them a waterproofer. That's not how any other trade or really any other profession works in a space, and that's why we support that position.
Yeah, and I mean, waterproofing is an interesting one where, there's an expectation that the waterproofer will put the same level of warranty on their job as what the builder would on their build. And yet, if we're talking about a bathroom, for example, on average, a waterproofer might make $400. So yeah, I think the registration and we do need to have registration, so all trades registered, and then if you want to practice on your own, you should become licensed. So
Yeah. Yeah,
why
I was just
we're
going to add to that one, mate, and not to mention about the warranty, but also that a lot of waterproofers will get contracted in a D&C contract,
yeah,
when really they're just a lot of the time being turned up. The builder's prepared the area and they get told exactly what to do, which is fine, but not when you get stitched up for taking full design liability of
yeah.
something you had no control over.
Yeah, so it's an interesting point you raise, and we are heading into a really litigious space now. And, we're seeing a lot of large contracting companies, particularly in the commercial sector, being forced, and not only in waterproofing, being forced or put under contract to sign a director's guarantee. And maybe not everyone's familiar with the director's guarantee. We're not going to break it all down tonight, but that's quite an alarming position to be put in, and a pretty serious position to be put in just for doing what you've basically always done on the tools, and now you're potentially putting your house on the line to ensure you're doing the job properly. So at the Construction Connect event this year, we're going to have one of our legal speakers who will be talking about this particular topic. So if you haven't signed up to come along, then I strongly recommend you do, because this year is going to be a game changer. We're also going to be focusing on really significant impacts that are going to come across to the industry, more focused for Class 2 to 9 buildings on the NCC 2025 changes. What are your thoughts on those, David, in relation to waterproofing, and, what are the pros and cons, or, some gaps or issues that you're going to see coming from these changes, positive or negative?
Look, I do think they're really good changes. I think they are targeted at solving issues um, that have been the cause of some pretty bad leaks
Yeah.
historically. So I like that they have gone down this path. It's the Building Codes Board behind the NCC has taken a serious look at waterproofing, which I think is always good, and said, okay, we need to make some serious changes here, right? I'm also sympathetic of how significant those changes are going to be for the builders, and the changes that they're going to need to make with the way they build their structures now and
Yeah.
sequence work in order to achieve these things. So a little bit of both right there.
Who's on the hook the most, do you think, out of the trades?
Well, considering that a lot of these changes are very structurally driven, um, a lot of the pain will be felt before the waterproofer even arrives on site, to be honest. So if I had to pick one off the top of my head, I would say the concreter. We're going to, I imagine, see builders wanting to push these obligations onto the concreter to achieve these outcomes, which they're
Yeah.
not familiar with and are going to have to upskill. Um, in a way, I envisage that it might make things a little bit better for the waterproofer because there's so much more emphasis on how good does the structural substrate need to be before the waterproofer even gets to site. So there's a bit of silver lining there from the waterproofer side of things. But all in all, I do feel like whenever there's a significant increase in stringency, it puts a lot more stress on the projects, and
Yeah.
that stress comes out until people figure out a way how to handle it. So I think there's some things we know are going to be difficult, and I think there's also the unforeseens. There was with the NCC 2022 when it came out. We thought we had a good idea, and then there were these unforeseen knock-on effects that came up. So we just have to try and navigate those. And I guess that's what I enjoy is helping people deal with these problems through application of my skills and expertise.
Yeah, and I think, I do agree. I think the changes overall are quite positive. I also agree that I think the concreters are the ones who are really going to, be put in a position where they need to ensure they've got everything documented correctly. They've tried to probably simplify the design or the amount of different design variables, particularly around external waterproofing, to minimize the severity of risk. So overall, I think they're good. But yeah, there is going to be, like any change that comes into the industry, there's always going to be, you're going to hit a couple of rocks on the way out the heads. So with what you do and how busy you are, and you and I, we do have a personal relationship outside of the multitude of things we do. What drives and inspires you out of work, mate? So, David Previte, the man, taking off the waterproofing integrity hat and taking off the AIW president hat. What drives the man, David Previte?
That's a good question. I think one thing I've found success in, and this is a bit of advice for anyone who's lucky enough to be able to do it, um, if you can find hobbies and interests that have a degree of overlap onto what you do as a professional career, right? And I'll explain that one of the things that I'm attracted to is technology, emerging technology, and the application of it, right? So I spend what spare time I might have looking at those things as a personal interest, and I enjoy seeing what we've been able to achieve as humans, and then figuring out how it all works, and then saying, okay, well, how can we apply that to our industry? And to be honest, I think that's probably a solid part of why we've been successful to date is that uh, curiosity, which I enjoy as something outside work, but then it blends in nicely and I can drag it over into work and say, well, okay, I've learned this now, and here's how we're going to apply it. It might be a new test method, it might be AI technology. I'm a big fan of. We're not going to really talk about that tonight, but I spend a huge amount of time looking at how that can be applied to get outcomes faster and more effectively, and to a higher standard for our clients. So having that synergy is great. And then also I have a great family which allows me to do these things during the week and get what I need to get done. So I have a commitment to them on the weekend to really make a solid time to enjoy our time together.
So, whilst we're on the topic of AI, just really quickly, for those people who think you can solely rely on it to do your work, I know you focus a lot on AI. What impact do you think it's going to have on the construction industry and those who are relying on it solely to be their expert consultant, what advice would you give them?
Oh, relying on it solely to be your expert consultant, that sounds like a really big mistake. But I want to, when you ask this question, one of my favorite, more recent quotes came to mind, right? And we say this internally in the office as a way of encouraging the embracing of this new standard and way of working. And it's especially in a bit of a niche space like this. Um, we believe that AI is not going to steal your job. And I'm talking about, consulting and white collar work here particularly. And AI is not going to steal your job, but someone that knows how to use AI is going to.
Yeah,
That's the phase that we're in at the moment. And that's the right mindset that anyone that is trying to figure out how to deal with this, that's what you should be thinking. If you're not the person that's learning how to use AI to be more effective, then you're the person that's going to be replaced by someone that does.
good call. We're going to wrap it up here. In your view, what does it mean to truly build to win in today's industry?
I should have thought about this one beforehand. Um, build to win. I think I'd have to say bring a long-term mindset. Some of the worst things that I've seen happen on a construction project
Yep.
or in a business or an office space or even with someone's personal life is being uh, short-term focused and trying to get a quick win now and grab whatever you can here because the truth is we make buildings that are going to be around for a long time, right? So any shortcuts that you're implementing to get that quick win, they're not going to disappear. They're going to stay there. They're going to haunt you. And time passes slowly but quickly at the same time. And it won't be too long till chickens come home to roost. And so if you want to win, look for the long-term win, not the short-term one.